challenges of winemaking in the present and looking towards the future? Welcome to the first episode of Winemaking Experiences by Enartis, the podcast dedicated to the world of winemaking. In this occasion, we're going to talk about Tartaric stabilization in wine and the positive impact that the evolution of stabilization techniques has had. Not only have these evolutions increased optimization and safety of the stabilization process, but also help with consideration to environmental and economic factors. Let's find out together how innovations in wine stabilization can lead to improved quality while being environmentally sustainable.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this episode of our podcast. My name is Miklós Jobbágy, Sales Manager of Enartis Central Europe, and together with my colleague Jennifer Lincoln, Market Development Specialist for Enartis covering Northern Europe, we will give you the dubbed version of the conversation between Michele Manzo, the Commercial Director of Enartis Italy, and Gianni Triozzi, who is the Head of Research and Development of Enartis Worldwide.
Plus, we will sprinkle in a bit of extra commentary too.
Well, let's jump right in.
Yep, hope you all enjoy.
Let's talk about an important topic for all wineries, Tartaric stabilization.
A perfect opportunity to share some reflections.
Last month I got my electricity bill and I was surprised how expensive it was, compared to 2 years ago, even last year. Was it the same for you?
Yes, certainly we've all felt the burden of bills a little bit lately. Personally, in our homes, but even if we expand the scale a little bit and look towards producers, companies, and those who use a lot of energy have taken on quite a challenge.
Since we work all over the world, I believe we can see a very global view of what is happening in the wine industry, and certainly electricity is one of those aspects that winemakers must keep in mind. Especially today, as the world is asking us how we can avoid consuming so much energy. But we must have an even further approach, a more innovative approach on this topic. And I think the approach is not only to talk about lowering energy costs or consumption, but the potential to reduce the use of electricity for Tartaric stabilization almost entirely. And this discovery that has been made by Gianni Triozzi is focused specifically on sustainability in the Tartaric stabilization process.
Historically, Tartaric stabilization was handled through refrigeration, so in Enology it has always been regarded as cold stabilization. We know today that achieving Tartaric stability through refrigeration uses on average 2.2 kilowatt hours of electricity per hectoliter of stabilized wine. But there are not only energy impacts, but quality impacts as well, because cold stabilization causes wines to lose freshness, mainly due to the loss of acidity. But there is, of course, the possibility of oxidation during the process too. Winemakers know very well what to expect when tasting wines after cold stabilization. It is quite normal to taste these wines and feel that it has lost volume, a loss of quality in general.
And so, in the face of everything you just told us, what has been done in recent years regarding Tartaric stabilization?
So, at Enartis, we decided to take a step forward from the techniques winemakers historically used and developed the application of potassium polyaspartate in wine. We started a project based in Europe with the help of non-European companies as well, aimed to create synergy and achieve the ultimate goal of fine-tuning the compound in the enological context. Plus, also learn more about the effects of the alternative techniques as well.
So you're saying not only did Enartis want to look into the molecule, but the entire European community was interested in finding a better and more sustainable way to Tartaric stabilize wines.
Yes, we wanted something new to replace a technique now considered outdated and based on a much higher sustainability approach.
Sustainability, which is a word that is a bit, let's say, overused these days. But we didn't just throw the word around. We got proof in the numbers and fact to back it up.
Exactly. And just to give you some details, we know that by stabilizing wine using potassium polyaspartate, we can save, for each hectoliter of stabilized wine, about 2 kilowatt hours of electricity, about 6 liters of water, and we can avoid emitting 1.2 kilograms of CO2.
And we took advantage of a compound already naturally present in wine.
The beauty of this innovation is that it is really based on something that is naturally present in all wines. So what did we do? We understood well the potential of a small amino acid, aspartic acid. We understood that by increasing its size, this aspartic acid would have certain characteristics in wine and would allow for the achievement of tartrate stability. So we increased the size, created a chain, then verified the effectiveness of this new molecule by simply enlarging it dimensionally. All of this now makes it possible to achieve tartrate stability by making a simple addition.
Very convenient for all wineries. Imagine a liquid product that winemakers can add directly into the wine and in a completely sustainable way, because we don't turn on any refrigerators, we don't use any water-consuming techniques, and we stabilize wine within a few hours. And to touch on the point from the beginning of the episode, we also preserving quality.
Hi everyone, my name is Lida Melandra and I am the General Manager of Enartis South Africa. In South Africa, we have had the unfortunate experience of load shedding for approximately 10 years. This has become increasingly worse in the last 2 to 3 years. And it's really due to the inability of our power plants to supply sufficient energy for our country's needs. And we hope and believe that the government is working on a solution to resolve this, but it is a long-term project and we really can't see the solution in the near future. And so what it means for wineries is they have to really look at alternative power supply resources. And this is not really easy, as some wineries have to invest in certain solutions such as solar power. And that means they have to implement equipment such as solar panels, batteries, and inverters. Other wineries have gone for diesel fuel generators. And this has its own challenge in that the price of diesel fuel is increasing year on year. Many wineries that cannot invest in these options are at the mercy of what we call a load shedding schedule. And the country has an app where you can check what stage of load shedding we're on. And then depending on what area you're in will depend on how long and for what time you will experience a power outage. But it could be anything from 2 to 8 hours per day. And you can imagine that planning of operations in a winery becomes very difficult with limited amount of electricity. I believe the biggest concerns for wineries will be around cost effectivity. All these additional costs of equipment or timing or planning makes it very difficult to pass on to a consumer, especially when we're working in a price competitive market. Secondly, process efficiencies. It's super difficult to plan what needs to be done with an unpredictable load shedding schedule. And thirdly, like a big concern for winemakers is that they do not want to compromise on their wine quality. And then finally, we all know there's a huge drive towards environmental sustainability. And this is not something we can achieve using diesel fuel generators that have a very high amount of carbon emissions. And so with all these factors that I've mentioned, it really forces our winemakers to look for alternative solutions that can address those concerns of cost, efficiency, quality, and sustainability.
We listened to the contribution that Lida, our general manager in South Africa, gave, and I think it is fair to say it's not only an issue in South Africa, or at least not only for now. Another example, of course, is in California.
Yes, they've been facing horrible wildfires. It was common for wineries to be without power for days at a time, and even to protect homes and businesses during fire weather days, think about windy, high temperatures, etc., they would shut off electricity entirely to avoid potentially triggering the fires.
I believe it is safe to say that winemakers globally will need to start looking towards alternative options. But back to the topic of sustainability, we also have to think about the fact that wineries are aiming to be economically sustainable as well. So wines need to be sustainably made, but also with guaranteed stability and of high quality. No longer do we have wineries only selling in local markets. Wine is being sold all around the world, whether it be in a bottle at a store, in a restaurant, or in bulk, from Italy to Hong Kong.
Yes, this is a very important point of reflection because today we know that economically healthy companies are present in world markets. So there is no longer just regional or national markets. The areas are much wider, so in this context, it is very important to be open to use products containing potassium polyaspartate. And our specific product range at Enartis containing potassium polyaspartate is called Zenith. These products are required to maintain tartrate stability over time, and this is absolutely achieved, even exceeded. There is no longer any doubt, is there? The stability achieved is maintained for many years, and the wines shipped around the world arrive at the end customer with the level of stability planned by the winemaker. We know that shipping conditions are not always ideal. Today we live in the age of the internet, right? So we are constantly tracking shipments. We are well aware that ship-stopped imports don't maintain ideal wine temperatures, and not to mention wine that has been on ships for long journeys. These conditions are no longer a problem for additives. Additives today have evolved to handle these types of conditions.
I'm glad you mentioned the word additive. I think it can be a bit of a taboo, so it would be great to discuss it more. But first, I believe that being an enologist is one of the oldest jobs in the world because ever since wine production began, the goal of those who make wine is to improve its quality. And we have done it for thousands of years, always striving to produce higher quality wine.
Yes, and we can say that wine is being increasingly consumed. We know this, of course, from market research. So wine today has the basic requirement of being of high quality. Wine that unfortunately has average or questionable quality will lose market share in the coming years. So along these lines, we want the development of a high quality additive, which can give certain characteristics to the finished product while, of course, preserving the wine's quality.
And this is a fundamental aspect because additive has always been thought of outside the world of winemaking as something that changes the nature of the product. But in truth, what we are doing is preserving and improving wine over time.
But the meaning of the term additive is always a little negative, right? I mean, in my opinion, I think this is wrong. Wrong for many reasons. I can say that in the particular case of potassium polyaspartate, which is for all intents and purposes an additive, it is an additive containing of a molecule that is naturally present in all wines, naturally present in wines we have been consuming over thousands of years.
What's more, the use of polyaspartate has recently been permitted in a country that is increasingly gaining a foothold in winemaking, China. So I guess it was not by chance that they chose this additive. The only additive allowed in China today for tartrate stabilization.
Yes, this highlights what we've been talking about. China decides to authorize potassium polyaspartate as the only stabilizer for specific application in wine. Carboxymethylcellulose and metatartaric acid, the historical additives, have never been authorized, but who knows why this decision. We believe it's motivated by the fact that this additive is by far the most evolved, usable, and it goes precisely in the direction of protecting enology by using molecules precisely akin to the compound we are going to manage.
We must also keep in mind that in December 2023, we will begin a new era in the world of wine labeling as wineries will have to affix a QR code with nutritional values and a list of added ingredients. What will become of polyaspartate?
Polyaspartate will be part of the list of additives used during the production process, but its presence will indicate a precise direction chosen by the producer, namely to apply more precision winemaking and move in the direction of better sustainability.
Well, I think we have to come to the conclusion of this episode of the podcast. The topic was great, so thank you very much for being here with me today to discuss tartaric stabilization of wines through the use of Zenith, a product containing potassium polyaspartate.
Thank you for the invitation, and it was nice to share these reflections. I hope they will be useful for those of you listening as well.
Well then, see you, or better, talk to you later on the next episode of our podcast.